Monday lecture.
Monday lecture?
Yeah, did you have anything on YouTube for that?
If it is recorded, it's going to be on the drive on this system. So let me check. I think it's on the temp drive. Attack. It's not. It's probably not uploaded because if it were, it should be here already.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it is here. So I got.
Okay.
Yep, it's already uploaded. Right here.
Yeah, because I was wondering you didn't do the thing last week.
Well, he did. He just had to download an old script
Yeah.
from his server.
Yeah. We have about 1/3 of the class here.
By the way, you should update that.
Huh?
By the way, you should update your script.
Update my script. Oh yeah. Yeah, that one I don't use too often. You know, I only use it at home when I do screen recording at home. Well, today's going to be an interesting class. It'll all be lecture. I won't be doing a whole lot of coding.
Okay.
I did some of that coding, but I felt that it's really kind of important to go over the concepts first, and then next Monday we'll actually start to do some coding. This one is really tough. I mean, I'm not going to turn it into a homework assignment because it really involves a lot of concepts working together. But it is kind of important to kind of go over this, because I really think that this is where things are going. Also, these applications really show the complexity of an Android application that requires that needs to talk to something else, and you need multiple threads to be happening at the same time. So it's a really good example, but it's kind of difficult as well, because we have to go over concepts like threading and also sockets, which is kind of advanced, even for C++, type of programming is kind of advanced too. Sorry?
Use the socket.
Sockets. Yeah, that's a networking, it's a networking concept. You have basically one thing that is waiting for a connection, and then you have other things that can say, okay, I want to connect to you, and that's how you make the connection. You have the server side, and then you have the client side. So we'll talk about all of that stuff, today, at least in terms of the concept. So today we won't be focusing a whole lot in terms of details, but we'll focus more on the concept, like, okay, what components are we talking about? Why do we need these components, and so on. And I'm just gonna wait maybe another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll get started with this. So did you guys, think of any new ways to use Bluetooth connectivity on an Android device?
Not really new, but I've heard that people with hearing aids can have them Bluetooth enabled.
Yep, they are.
Then you can adjust the volume through your smartphone.
Yep. Yep, just about, because it removes the necessity to have its own user interface. And when you talk about hearing aid, it's pretty hard to put a user interface on it to begin with. It's a small device. It's supposed to be small, and then once you put in buttons and knobs and whatnot, it's really kind of difficult.
I think a step down from that is just it detects a magnetic field, so you can just tap it and cycle through the volume. I know someone that has a hearing aid like that.
But Bluetooth is so much better because now you can configure just about anything you want to do. You can change the frequency response. You can amplify certain parts of the spectrum, and attenuate another portion. You can check the battery status. You can check how much time is left remaining runtime on the hearing aid device.
Though I think it's better off to be passive powered for communication. Otherwise, you'll be just draining the battery that you're trying to use. Right.
But the concept of using using Bluetooth to turn your Android or mobile device into a dumb terminal for another device, I think that is really the trend. How this is where things are going, and there's no going back.
Can NFC also send commands?
That part I'm not sure. NFC is another communication protocol. I don't think it's as flexible as Bluetooth, in other words, with NFC, I think it is pretty clear cut. Who's the server and who's the client. With
Yeah.
Bluetooth, it's kind of like reversible. It's an arbitration process. It's like, okay, do you want to be a server? Do you want me to be a server? So you can actually negotiate, and it's pretty much equal in that case. All right, maybe 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started.
So I was just thinking maybe like NFC could have like a send an ID, but an encoded ID, where first part is the device, second part is a specific specification of a parameter. Then it can just decode that that ID that's being sent.
Mm-hmm. I have not looked into NFC at all, so I'm not familiar with NFC communication. But NFC has a closer range than Bluetooth. You can get Bluetooth, different classes of Bluetooth devices. They can work up to 100 yards away, I think. The class 3 devices can work up to 100 yards away, 100 meters.
Yeah, the good thing about the NFC is that the device can be passive, where it does not need a battery in order to operate.
Okay. So it's basically, but that's only because it's powered by the other device, using the magnetic field.
Bluetooth is nice, but the other side needs a battery.
Yep, certainly. All right, 2 more minutes, and then we can get started. I can definitely see cars being more Bluetooth enabled, just for end user type of configuration. I think they can be definitely be more. There will be more stuff you can configure with Bluetooth. You had a driving experience? No.
I was just saying, like, if you had the Bluetooth enabled with other cars,
Oh.
and then road rage.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Oh, you can send a message on somebody else's dashboard.
Yeah.
Well, that's also a concern. More things you're making wireless,
You can
more
hack.
exposure.
Yeah, because you can hack without having like real physical access. You just have to be either close enough or have a directional antenna, a really really good directional antenna. It's called Wi-Fi or Bluetooth sniping.
Yeah, then it's just the level of security on the system you're trying to hack.
Yep. Oh, you guys, what you were laughing. You think that's not Bluetooth sniping or blue sniping in Wikipedia? And there should be pictures about this too, so we can look for images. There we go. And this is from Tom's Guide. This is not from this is definitely not from a website that most people say, oh, nut job. This is pretty mainstream. So you can see the guys, right here. He basically put a shoulder stock, on top of a directional antenna, and then use, at the rooftop. You have. This is really good, if you live in the city, because you have like rooftops and balconies and stuff like that, and you can just snipe, into different offices and homes. This device can extend the range. Okay, you can read the rest, for the details. But I think these devices or these directional antennae can extend the range of your Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to up to close to a mile.
I remember we used like a Pringles can.
Yeah. Cantana is one of the names of a commercial product, but most of these inside the can is a helical, antenna, and they have to calculate the spacing, of the antenna for the frequency that you work with. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi G, wireless G, has about the same frequency, which is 2.4 gigahertz. So it will work with both if you wind it in the correct way. talking about Bluetooth sniping. This is not even new. I mean, if you look at the date of the article, this is actually pretty old.
2005.
Yeah, 2005. So, so since we probably now we have robotic snipers, right? I mean, there's no person there. It's just a little turret. Now, the nice thing about having a turret and having it automated is you can have it to traverse, in a certain way. There's a search pattern, and then when it finds something, it can lock the direction. It's like, okay, in this direction, we find these devices, so it becomes easier to go back and point back to the same location, you locate the same device. So I'm pretty sure by 2014, like 9 years after this article is written, we now have robotic blue snipers. Chris is just thinking, tech is filled with bad ideas.
Yes. The funny thing is that you actually hope that that's true. It's not that you're just saying it could be true. You hope.
Well, I think it is true because technology is already at that point. I mean, you just need to have a turret that has a stepper motor, actuators, and you don't even have to be there. You just program a script to have that thing to run in a search pattern.
Well, if it wasn't true before today, it is now because you've just given the people the instructions to do it.
Yep. And the point is you can make it less than $50. I think that really is the key issue. You don't need to be the NSA or you don't need to be a government agency to afford to have something like that. All right. Well, what we'll do today is quite exciting. We're going to talk about Bluetooth. I read through the entire thing. I experimented with the coding, or at least a part of the coding. It's really complex, from a perspective, because you have to understand, not only Bluetooth type of stuff, but we also have to talk about sockets, which is a concept that is not introduced until now. It's also a somewhat advanced operating system concept, so we have to kind of go through some of that stuff first. It also requires the use of multiple threading, and also the discussion of intents. Okay, your application has to say, okay, I need something to be done, and whatever application can get it done will get the intent and start up, and get it done. So it goes in both ways too. So we'll take a look today, at all of these, kind of interesting stuff.
Recording started?
Recorder has been started for a while. Yep,
Oh,
has started already, and the audio channel is the correct one. So we are all set up, ready to go.
Yay, I did it.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with this one. I'm just, for the most part, I'll be reading here, but then I'll be, kind of interjecting, my understanding on, and also extension of some of the discussion here. This particular article is well written. I have to say that this is one of the better tutorials that on the Android side. On the other hand, it is also written for people who already have experience working with sockets and other types of programming. So it's not exactly written for a class like this. It is more written for people who already know the concepts and just need to connect all the pieces together. People who already know all the pieces just need to know how we hook up all the pieces. So that's why I'm going to be the stitching part of this one. So I'll be helping you guys to stitch all the pieces together. Okay, the Android platform includes support for the Bluetooth network stack, which allows the device to wireless exchange data with another Bluetooth device. Now, for the most part, this sentence here, exchanging data with other devices, with other Bluetooth devices, for the most part, these exchange can be done with using streams. Okay, in other words, we're talking about an input file and an output file. Okay, you can put bytes into the output file, and they can receive bytes from the input file. There's no real actual protocol unless you're talking about a certain profile, but you can make Bluetooth devices very general, and it's just a serial device. Okay, you just send out a few bytes, and then the other device can send back a few bytes. So the communication protocol, it can be very general, and you can use it for just about any purpose that you want to use it for. The application framework provides access to the Bluetooth functionality through the Android Bluetooth APIs and it's pretty extensive. You know, the Bluetooth API is actually pretty extensive. You can do just about anything you want to do with this API. These APIs let applications wireless connect to other Bluetooth devices, enabling point-to-point and multi-point wireless features. Point-to-point means you have two devices talking to each other, and a multi-point means you have one device that can talk to multiple devices at the same time. And every time we want to use Bluetooth for any type of application, most of the time we need to do all of these things, or at least some of these things. The first one is to scan for other Bluetooth devices. In other words, your application may be looking for a specific Bluetooth device. So instead of requiring the user to go to the settings of your Android system, you can also initiate the scan from within your application to locate the device that you want to connect to. The Fitbit application is the same way. Okay, you can once you run the Fitbit application, it knows that it needs to scan for a Fitbit tracker device, and it doesn't say that okay, you have to make the connection first and then come back to me and then we'll do something later. Okay. Query the local Bluetooth adapter for paired Bluetooth devices. This one is easier to do because it is just relying on a list of already paired Bluetooth devices. So you're basically just asking for the adapter and say, okay, who do you know already? Give me a list of all the Bluetooth devices that you already know. Now, this is also a good point to say, a connection is different from pairing. Okay, pairing is simply establishing, okay, I know this device, that device, is willing to make a connection with me. Okay, and that's it. That's pairing. A connection can only happen between paired devices, but a connection is an actual connection. So if two devices are connected, they can actually talk to each other. When they're just paired, they're not necessarily talking to each other. So you can have like a gazillion paired devices with your phone and only talk to one, have only connection to one of them, or none, if you want to. Establish RF comm channels. RF is radio frequency, comm is communication. So an RF comm channel is basically just a connection between two Bluetooth devices. And once you have a connection, established, then you can start to have communication between the devices. Connect to other devices through service discovery. This one is kind of advanced because it requires the use of a service in Android. Transfer data to and from other devices. This one is not too hard. It's just a matter of mapping a device to an input stream and an output stream. And then we have manage multiple connections. How do you keep track of multiple connections at the same time? That's also kind of advanced. We may or may not be able to get to that one. This document describes how to use classic Bluetooth. Classic Bluetooth is the right choice for more battery-intensive operations, such as streaming and communication between Android devices. For Bluetooth devices with low power requirements, Android 4.3 introduces API support for Bluetooth low energy, and there's another link for that. Okay, but this is more general. We'll start with the general stuff first. If they talk about the different classes, so there are a few classes that you need to know. Well, I'll only focus on a few of these that are mentioned. The first one is Bluetooth adapter. Bluetooth adapter represents the Bluetooth adapter on your mobile device itself. Okay. In other words, if you have a Bluetooth device that has that is Bluetooth enabled, this is representing the host, the actual hardware device on your mobile device that can do the Bluetooth thing. Okay. A Bluetooth device, on the other hand, is representing the other thing that you want to connect to. So the adapter is on your own mobile device. The Bluetooth device is on the other side. It's a representation of a device on the other side. Bluetooth socket. Now this is an interesting concept that we have not talked about in this class. This is a topic usually in a more advanced operating system programming class, but it is kind of a useful concept. because it's not only used for Bluetooth connections, it's also used for general TCP connections. So we'll spend some time to talk about sockets today, just in general, what is a socket in theory and how it is used or how it is useful. A server socket is basically a specific kind of socket. A server socket is a place where other things can connect to. It has quote unquote an address. It says, I'm here, okay? Who wants to connect to me? So we'll talk about that as well. Bluetooth class, we may or may not be able to get to that one, as well as profile. So all of these, kind of more specific Bluetooth devices, we probably cannot get to these today. Maybe at a certain point we can get to these ones. So we'll probably stop, if at all, we can probably get to server socket today. It would be nice if we can just cover up to that point. Are there any questions at this point about what we'll be doing today? What will be the scope that we'll be covering today? No questions? All right. So if there are no questions, we'll kind of keep moving forward. And this part is, I'm reading the documents somewhat sequentially, just so that when you are reading it on your own, you can basically go through the same text and it's in the same order. Okay. The first part is, if you want to use Bluetooth features in your application, you have to go to the manifest file and make sure that you have this line here. In other words, you have to tell the Android framework, the Android system, and say that when this application runs, it needs access to the Bluetooth device. So this is what pops up when you try to install an application. It says this application requires blah 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 blah. So this will basically pop up the sentence that says your application requires access to the Bluetooth device. So you have to add this line to the manifest file. I have experimented with Eclipse. There is a graphical way to do it, but it's really kind of convoluted. It's just much easier to look at the XML file and just type it in in the text editor. You can use the GUI to do it. It's just not worth the trouble because there are like a few levels of stuff that you have to go through to get to it. All right, so this is pretty easy. You just have to set this up once in your application in the Android manifest.xml file, and once you're done with this, there's nothing else to do. It also mentioned here that if your application is to initiate device discovery or manipulate Bluetooth settings instead of just making a connection and also checking out what devices are already paired. If you want to do the device discovery, which means you're triggering the Bluetooth adapter to scan for devices around you. Okay, so if you need that, or if you want to change Bluetooth settings, like exposing your own device to other devices, then you will also need Bluetooth_admin permission. So you will need both permissions in that case. Are there any questions about the distinction between Bluetooth as opposed to Bluetooth_admin? Not a whole lot? Okay. All right, so setting up Bluetooth. Before your application can communicate over Bluetooth, you need to verify the Bluetooth is supported on the device. In other words, the first thing you want to check is to make sure that the device that your app is running on, in fact, has Bluetooth adapter on it, a Bluetooth adapter on it. To do this part is not too complicated, so I'll just kind of go over the code to do it. To go over the code to do this, you have to basically make this call first, okay? What this call is doing, or what this line is doing, is it is defining a variable called m Bluetooth adapter, lowercase m, and it is getting the result of uppercase Bluetooth adapter dot get default adapter. In other words, this is the class. Okay, anything that starts with uppercase is either a class or an interface, but this is definitely a class because it does not start with the uppercase I. And this is a class static method. What it does is it will just return a data structure of the type Bluetooth adapter, but only if your device has a Bluetooth adapter. Okay, so this is a quick and easy way to basically to create an object that is representing your Bluetooth adapter, so that later on you can use that object and say, okay, I want you to tell me, what devices are already paired. I want you to do the scan. I want you to do blah 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 blah. Okay. Are there any questions about the purpose of this line? So this is the first thing. Okay, very first thing you have to do is to locate the Bluetooth adapter, and then the second thing you have to do is to say, well, is there really one? Okay, does this mobile device actually have a Bluetooth adapter? If not, the call that we were placing earlier will return a null value. So you have to check for the null value first, because if the device does not have Bluetooth support, then there's nothing else you can do. Okay, that's absolutely nothing else you can do, and then you just have to report to the end user and say that, well, your device does not support Bluetooth, so we cannot proceed after this point. Are there any questions about this particular snippet of code? No questions? Okay. So if there are no questions, the text here is really just repeating what I said, so I'm not going to go through that text here. Now, assuming that M Bluetooth adapter is not null after get default adapter is called, then you can enable or check to see if Bluetooth is already enabled. Just because you have the adapter doesn't mean it is enabled. A lot of times we disable Bluetooth to save battery power. Okay, it's not particularly draining, but if you're really kind of running low on power and you really want to extend the battery life of your mobile device, a lot of times, if we're not talking through a headset, you can just turn off the Bluetooth adapter. So the first thing you want to do is to check whether it is enabled or not. So assuming M Bluetooth adapter is not null, the first thing you want to do is to make this call and make use of this inside a conditional statement. In this case, it's an if statement, and basically say, is it enabled? Okay, I know I have a device, but is it enabled? If it is not enabled, because of the exclamation point on the left-hand side, this is basically saying, if not enabled, we want to do the following. Okay, because you want to enable it. There's no enable method in a Bluetooth adapter. You cannot just say, okay, enable and turn it on. There are several good reasons why there's no method to do it. The first one is whether you want to turn on the Bluetooth device or not is not really something that your application should be able to do by itself, because it affects the entire system, not just this one application. And then the second thing it has to do with the process to turn on the Bluetooth device or adapter takes quite a bit of time. So you don't want to do it, inside the same application or using the main thread, because while your Bluetooth device is starting up and it's doing all kinds of stuff to, scan around, your application will not be responsive. Because if you're using the main thread to do this, remember what the main thread is? The main thread is also called the UI thread, the user interface thread. If it is busy, turning on the Bluetooth adapter, it's not going to respond to touch events. So your application will look like it's frozen during that time, so that's why you don't want to do it that way. So the way to turn on the Bluetooth device is to go through these two lines. Now, there are only two lines here, but they're really kind of complicated. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to explain one line at a time, and then I'll stop, and then I'll explain what is really going on here. The first line doesn't really do anything, except it creates and initializes an intent object. Okay, an intent is basically a way for the Android system to coordinate between applications. Okay, let me say that again. An intent in Android is basically a particular type of object so that the Android system as a whole can coordinate between the applications. Okay, so in this case, this particular application says, oh, the Bluetooth adapter is not enabled. I want to enable it. Okay, that's what this application wants to do. But it doesn't really have a way to turn on the Bluetooth adapter. So what it's doing now is to broadcast a message to the entire system and say, I want to enable the Bluetooth device. Who can do it for me? And that's all it's saying. Okay, I have the intent to turn on the Bluetooth adapter, and whoever can do it, please do it. That's all it's saying. Well, this is not even sending the message. This is just creating the message. In other words, you're writing, a little note. You're writing a little note that says, I need the Bluetooth device to be enabled, and you're just writing that note at this point. The note is the intent. The second one, start activity for result, is a method that is a member of of an activity itself and also of a fragment. Okay, so you can call this method from within an activity class method or within a fragment method. Okay, you can do it from either one. So what this is doing is this is actually sending the message that we wrote a little bit earlier in the previous line and send it to the operating system, send it to the Android operating system, and basically say, okay, operating system, I got something for you. I need help. All right? Is that part okay so far? Just the concept. So what do you think the Android operating system is going to do after it receives this little request?
Settings to the Bluetooth menu.
Eventually, yes. Eventually, that's what it would do. So what the operating system would do after it receives an intent from one of the applications is, okay, I just got this letter here. Somebody wants to turn on the Bluetooth, adapter. And then what it will do is it will check the list of all the active or all the registered installed applications and ask, which one of you can do this? Oh, okay, check the browser. Nope, you did not say that you can turn on the Bluetooth device. Never mind. Next, we can check, let's say the calendar. The calendar says, nope, I know nothing about your Bluetooth devices. Fine, okay, move down the list and keep going until it finds the settings application. The settings application, when the settings application in its XML manifest would also advertise and say that if anyone wants to turn on Bluetooth devices, I know how to do it. Okay, so at that point, the Android operating system will know and say, hey, okay, I see that you know how to turn on the Bluetooth device, so I'm going to let you do it. So that's why at that point, whatever application is trying to turn on the Bluetooth device will now be quote-unquote in the background. And then the foreground will be the settings application popping up already on the page of, okay, do you want to turn on the Bluetooth device? So this is how you can trigger one application to run from another application in the Android system. Are we doing okay so far with what these two lines are actually doing? The first line creates a message. The second line sends the message to the operating system and basically say, okay, I need help here. Okay, what do you need help with? I need help with requesting a Bluetooth adapter to turn on. This part here, this is a specific string that is standardized to the system. Okay, you can look it up. It will basically tell you it's a string, and that string is predefined by the Bluetooth adapter class to represent the string that is needed in order for the Android operating system to understand, okay, I guess somebody needs to have the Bluetooth adapter to turn on. Yep.
Are those constants?
They're basically constants, but it's actually a string. It's not an integer. So are there any questions about the meaning of these two lines? Not so much the specifics, but the meaning and what they're really trying to do. Well, the other thing.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Quickly, I'm not certain if I understand the purpose of the second parameter in the start activity for result.
Aha. Okay. I knew
It
that's
seems
what
like
it's
it's
going to ask.
duplicated.
Nope, it's not a duplication. You mean you're talking about this one, right?
Right. It seems like the message itself, the intent, has the information about your requesting.
You're absolutely right. Okay, now this number or this identifier, this is just an integer. Okay, request enable BT is an integer constant that you define in your application. If you want to, you can just say 4. Okay, 10. You can give it whatever number you want. Okay, 1,000, 2014, whatever. Okay. But what this is useful for, okay, that's a very good question, because I was just about to want to talk about what start activity for result is really doing. It's really just sending that message out. Okay. When do you think the Android system would actually get around to, ask the settings application to pop up and do its thing? Whenever it gets around to do it, right? So at that time, when start activity for result does not block. It comes back right away. As soon as the message is sent to the operating system, it comes back and say, I'm ready to do more stuff. Okay. But typically you don't want to do anything else because you don't want to do anything until you confirm whether the Bluetooth adapter is turned on or not. Because it is possible the user says, I don't want to turn on the Bluetooth adapter, and then it just comes back and say, nope, not going to happen. Okay, that's entirely possible. But during that time, your application can still run and do whatever it wants to do, but typically you don't want to do anything else. So now the question is, how does it know when the user says, okay, I'm going to turn on the Bluetooth device, and then it comes back to your application? So the question is, how does your application know about that event? Okay, the user says, yes, turn on the Bluetooth device. Okay.
So you're waiting for a message or a response that is related to that.
That is correct. So what you need to do with this particular application is after start activity for result, it should basically just say, okay, I have nothing else to do now. Okay, all right. So you just it comes to the end of that particular method and you're done. Okay. So what happens next is your application has to implement this particular method on activity result. Okay. So what happens is the Android operating system is going to be the kind of like the arbitrator, and it will go to the other application and say, hey, somebody needs to turn on the Bluetooth adapter. I know you can do it, so I'll let you, become the foreground application so that the user can choose whether to turn on the Bluetooth adapter or not. After the user makes a choice, the Android operating system will say, oh, okay, I can see that, you have done your part. Okay, you have asked the user to turn on or turn off the Bluetooth device, and it's time to go back to the requesting application and tell the requesting application and say, remember earlier you told me that you want to turn on the Bluetooth adapter? Here's the answer from the other application. When that result comes back, the on activity result method, callback method, is going to be called. So that's why you need to process it. Okay. So if I draw a picture, I'm not sure whether I can do it, easily, on the screen here. Okay. So I'll give it a try. So here's Inkscape. And by the way, Inkscape is a cross-platform. You can install it in Windows as well. It's a pretty good, useful application for pictures and graphics stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to use squares to represent components in the system. So we have this component here, and I would call that your 6-point font is not going to work very well. So let's make it 18. Okay, so this is your app, your BT app, your Bluetooth application. And then we have the Android operating system here. And then we have the settings application over here. Okay. So the way it goes is your application is sending an intent to the Android operating system first. And we can definitely make it more fancy, and have arrows and stuff like that. Stroke style. And we want an end marker to be an arrow. That's nice. Okay, that works. Okay. So this is the first step, which is the intent. Okay. Is your application saying, I want to have the Bluetooth adapter turned on? That's the first arrow. And then in return, the Android app operating system is going to look up its list of installed applications and find out who which one of the applications can actually turn on the Bluetooth device. So once it identifies that the settings application can do it, it's going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to pass it along to the settings application, so that the settings application can now go to the right page on the Bluetooth screen and say, okay, do we want to turn on the Bluetooth device or not? Are we doing okay so far at this point? Okay.
Does the Android OS create a separate message to send to settings?
Yes.
Okay.
Because what happens is the intent from your application is going through the Android system, and then new message is basically generated and is placed into the queue for the settings application. If the settings application is not running, the Android operating system will make it run. It will basically start it. If it's already running, it will bring it to the foreground. Okay. So once the user types something on the keyboard or click on and off, what happens is we have to turn the arrow around, so we can just say flip horizontal. There we go. So at that point, settings will say, okay, I'm done here. Okay, the user has made his choice. And then the Android operating system will now go back and say, okay, who asked me to do this again? Right? And then at that point, the Android operating system will say, I can see that this Bluetooth application was the original application that requested the Bluetooth adapter to turn on. So I'm going to let you know and say that, okay, the user has made a choice to turn on or not to turn on the Bluetooth adapter. Okay, are we doing okay so far? Okay. Yep.
Do you have to do anything special to be able to for the Android to know to go back to your app that way?
Nope. You don't have to do anything special because of the original call that we were using. When you use this method, insight an activity or fragment, to start another app, to basically broadcast an intent to do something, it automatically register with the Android operating system the origin of the request. So when the result comes back, because you asked for a result, so when there is a result to come back, it will definitely come back to your application. But when it does come back to your application, how do you know, okay, there's a result from something that I requested earlier? Well, to know that, you have to use the onActivityResult callback, and this one has to be in your activity class or a subclass of your activity. So you have to override this particular method to handle the result that is coming back to you. Okay? So it's kind of convoluted because this thing here is not in the same method as this thing here. So now we are separating the trigger to start an operation in one particular method, and then the method to handle the result coming back from the Android operating system is another method. It's another subroutine, basically. Are we doing okay so far? Yep.
What if when the settings comes up, we don't turn the Bluetooth on?
It will still come back as a result. So when it comes back as a result, let's take a look at this particular callback. So I'm going to do a right-click, a new tab here. Okay, just from the title itself, you can see that this is a method of the activity class. So that means if you derive a subclass from activity, it will automatically inherit it. It is protected, and you have to override it. You basically have to write your own. And when it comes back, when this is called, there are several things it will come back with. And one of those is the request code. The request code is, okay, let me switch, nope, sorry. The request code is this code here. In other words, your application can send like a gazillion different intents to different type, for different situations. So when those results from these different intents come back, how do you know that this is the result of that particular request earlier? That is the identifier. And this is an identifier that is local to your application. So if you want to make this 2016, hey, that's fine. As long as your other subroutine also checks for 2016, then it will be okay. Am I making the connection here? Okay. And then the callback has a has a second parameter, which is the result code. This is also what you need to check. So in the result code, in the result code, you have to check for the two constants that are possible. One is result OK, which means the Bluetooth adapter is turned on, and then the other one is result cancelled, which means the adapter is remained off. Okay, the user basically said, I do not want to turn on the Bluetooth adapter. So that's what you need to check. Okay, are there any questions?
I'm assuming that if you have call on activity results with result code that is duplicated, that this, when you compile, it would figure out, or it's a runtime check of the request code.
It's a runtime check.
It's a runtime check.
It's a runtime check of the request enable BT constant.
Okay, or is it in the start activity for result? For example, in this, you make this call 2 times with the same request enable BT request code.
No, that's only once, because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first one does not make use of the
Okay.
integer.
For example, you call this start activity for result once, and then somewhere else you didn't realize you had called the had set use this request enable BT request code, and you use that request code again, the value again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming, I guess there would be a runtime check that said there's a duplication of the request code.
Okay, I see. So you're asking, what if you accidentally have 2 start activity for result using the same
Request
integer?
code. Yeah.
That's a good question, because I know this is not a blocking call, which means it will go through.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is the Android operating system will combine the 2 into 1. So if one is not surfaced yet, it will combine the 2 into 1, because it's both are just requesting the same thing. So they will come back as one single result.
Okay. It'll drop the first one.
Yeah, it will just combine the 2 into 1.
Yeah.
When the settings application is running in the foreground, your application cannot be running anymore, because your user interface thread will be waiting, will be in the loop, waiting for a message. So the chances of you being to place a second intent while the settings application is already running is basically none. But if not, it will just. It is also possible that it will just pop up the settings screen twice, and each one has its own result coming back. So are there any questions about this part? Okay, what you need to do in your own on activity result callback method? It needs to have a conditional statement. The first thing you need to check is whether the parameter of result code is matching request enable BT. If it does match, then you have to check result code itself and see if it is result OK, which means the end user said it's okay to turn on the Bluetooth adapter, or whether it is result cancelled, which means the user said, nope, I don't want to turn on the Bluetooth adapter.
You have to set up the on activity result before you initiate start activity for result, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
But that's a part of the class already. It's basically a overridden method in a subclass of activity. So typically you do it in main activity, and you override the method that is already in the superclass, and so that you can specify whatever logic you need to specify to handle the result code. Okay. Well, since there are so many questions about this part, let me just kind of go ahead and write this code, okay, just so that we can see what it looks like in an actual program. And so let's go to this one. Start up Eclipse. I'm running Android Eclipse through an external hard drive connected by USB 2.0, and I think this speed is still faster than than you guys running it from Windows. Now it has to basically compile and check all the code. While it's doing this, we can go ahead and start a new Android application project, and then we can say this one is just a test Bluetooth. Change this part
You should close the unused projects so it doesn't have to look at them each time you start up the application.
and then we will choose a later API level here. Okay, so now we have, okay, can you repeat what you just said?
Just right click on each project
Okay.
and you can close the project, or the one project you are working on, and close unrelated projects. That way it won't load resources and check each project when
got
you
it.
start up.
All right. Cool. So they're basically still there, but they're not active, quote unquote, active anymore.
Yeah, you just right click on it and
Got it.
open project.
Okay, so we have this test BT application. Remember what we said a little bit earlier? In order for this one to work or to install properly, you have to go to the Android manifest XML file, and then add that one line that says okay, this application will have to use Bluetooth. As I said, there are several ways to do this. You can actually go through the permission tab here, and then add a permission. So in this case, we have to use, it's a user's permission thing. You click OK, and here we can say which one we want to use. It's a Bluetooth permission, and that's it. Okay, you can do it this way. You can also just manually go in and change the text file itself. Sometimes the GUI method is not necessarily any faster because we already know what it should look like, so you might as well just type in that string. But this is one way to do it without using the editor. Okay. All right. So this part is okay. It's all done, and now we can go to the source part and actually look at the source code and see what we have to do. Okay. We want to trigger the operation through the use of a button. So let me just kind of go back to the layout first. And because I'm using fragment, the button attaches to the fragment and not to the main activity itself. So we go to here and we choose a small button, and we'll just put it here. I can change the button properties. And change the text on it. Just a good idea to change the text so that it reflects what the button does. So we'll go ahead and say new string, and this is the text of a button. We'll call this request BT enable. I cannot really run this in an emulator because the emulator probably does not have a Bluetooth device on it, but we'll give it a try. Okay, we'll give it a try. So we'll say request Bluetooth enable as the actual text, add it to the string table, and click OK. So now it is referring to a string table to put in the text of this button. It's just generally speaking a good idea so that when it's time to translate your application into different languages, there's only one file that you have to deal with using this particular method. Okay. So the next thing is how do I attach code to this particular button? We talked about this last time on Monday. The way to do this is to go into this file, but you cannot attach that method inside main activity at least by the time onCreate is called, the button is not created yet. So if the button is, or I should say the layout is not inflated yet at that point, so if the layout is not inflated at that point, you cannot really refer to it. So that's why we cannot do it inside the onCreate method anymore. Instead, we have to do it down here inside the fragment. And to be more specific, we have to do it inside onCreateView. So after the root view is inflated, then we can start to access components in that root view. Okay. So now we can say root view dot find view by ID r dot ID dot, okay, I forgot to save the files. Let's save the files. And it did reprompt me. So now we have button 1 as an ID, and we'll basically set the on-click listener of this particular button as follows. So we'll change this to new on-click listener, and then we define a anonymous class at this point, and it will complain because it doesn't know set. That part should be okay. Oh, it's because I have to import that particular class, and it's complaining now because I have there's one method to implement, so I'm adding the method to implement. So it's all basically, I'm using Eclipse to do most of the work for me. As far as bookkeeping is concerned, I'm letting Eclipse do most of the work. So at this point, with this on-click method, I want to trigger the whole operation. I want to say, check to see if there's a Bluetooth adapter. If so, I want it to turn on. That's all I want to do at this point. Okay. But that also means the Bluetooth adapter object needs to be passed around several times. Okay, I need to access it from multiple places. So one way to do it is to put it inside main activity itself. Okay, if I want to be lazy, this is one way to do it. So over here I can say I will keep track of a Bluetooth adapter object, and we'll just call it BT adapter here, and let it handle the importing here. And we can make this private, so it stays inside this particular class. The other class is actually inside the other. Okay, let me put it in. Okay, the placeholder fragment class is actually defined inside the main activity class, but it would not have access to a private member because the other class is a static class, so it won't have access to it. Okay, so getting back down here, we have to basically be able to refer to this one here. I do not think it will work. We can give it a try. BT adapter equals syntax error, misplaced constructs. So I don't think it's gonna work, but we'll go ahead and do this part here. All right. So what we can do is to put all the methods related to the Bluetooth adapter over here, and we'll say public initialize Bluetooth adapter, and it's going to return a void because there's nothing to return. Okay, so right here we can actually do all the things that we need to do. The first thing we have to do is to initialize the Bluetooth adapter itself. So basically we say Bluetooth adapter equals Bluetooth adapter dot get default adapter. So that means this line as a reminder is basically saying, okay, I want to see whether Bluetooth is even enabled, is available on this mobile device. Okay, if it is enabled, this will return an object. If it is not enabled, there's no such thing as a Bluetooth adapter on this mobile device, it will return a null. So the next thing I need to do is to check whether it's returning null or not. So I would say if BT adapter equals null, I will do one thing. else we'll do something else. Okay. So if it is returning null, that means I don't have a Bluetooth adapter on this mobile device. So I should just quit and say nope, can't do it. Okay. But I probably want to provide a message on the screen, saying that. And I found that this is one quick and easy way to do it. You can use a char sequence. And we'll just call it, message text here. And you can say no Bluetooth adapter available. Okay. And I just want to display this on the screen, like a little black background, with white text on it. You have probably seen it multiple times on a mobile device. When we run this, you'll see what I mean by that. It's called a toast. Okay. So we'll say toast, T-O-A-S-T, lowercase t equals toast dot make text. Make text requires 3 parameters. The first one is a context, and activity is a context. So I can just give it this because the activity itself is already a context. Text here has to do with the message text, so we'll give it message text itself, and then duration is either long or short. So in this case, we can refer back to toast dot and specify length short or length long. It is just an integer; it's a constant already predefined. In this case, I'll just have short here. So this gives me a quick and easy way to display something on screen. It doesn't really let the user stop. Okay, there's no OK or cancel. It just kind of pops up on the screen, and it fades away, after maybe half a second or a second or so. Okay. And then the other one is going to do exactly the opposite. Oh, wait, hold on a second here. I just made the toast object. I have to make the toast object itself show itself. And that's it. The first one, the previous line, or line 26, is creating a toast object, but it doesn't make use of it. It's like, okay, let's create this toast object, but it doesn't do a single thing. So it's the second line, or the line 27, that is telling the toast object and say, okay, show yourself on the screen. Yep.
Can you just remove toast t equals and just do a dot show at the end?
Yes. You can do that too. Yep. So you don't need a name for that particular object because we use it right away. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the other one. So I want to, basically create this application step by step. So this one, will basically say Bluetooth adapter is available. That's all I'm going to do. Okay, I don't even bother to enable it because I just want to check whether there is one or not. All right, so we'll save it. Start up the virtual machine.
I need to disable the close button on my virtual machine because I keep switching between the two and I end up closing the virtual machine.
You mean disable this one?
Yeah.
Alright, so we have the virtual machine up and running, and we can close the device manager and start our application. Go. I click this. And nothing happens. Oh, obviously nothing happens because there's nothing to trigger the execution of this particular method. Duh. Okay, so what we need to do now is to have another variable here. So we'll make this private main activity. Nope, we don't need that. Okay. This is how we're going to do it.
Just on the on-click.
Yeah, we have to put it into the on-click method. Okay, the question is, how does this on-click method get access to the activity that is containing this fragment? That is the question. So this is the way to do it. We can do a cast of main activity. Okay. And a fragment has a method called getActivity. So it can automatically get the activity that is containing the fragment. So this will give us an activity, and I'm casting it to downcasting to a subclass of main activity, and then inside that now we have access to the initialized Bluetooth adapter method. There we go. So are there any questions about this line? Let me hide this one first. Any questions about line 86?
So it won't work if you just remove the
cast?
Yeah, or the cast and get activity.
Well,
Will
get
not
activity.
recognize it.
Yeah, it would not recognize it, because this is a subclass, and the problem with this subclass is it's a static subclass. So any non-static member of main activity, it has no access. But I can always use the get activity to get the activity containing this particular fragment, but it will only return a class activity in that case. And the typical, the superclass activity does not have a method called initialize BT adapter. So that's why I have to downcast it first to main activity, which has that particular method. Then I can make use of it. Okay, that should do it. So let's go ahead and run it again. Click save. Launch. Okay. And this time it works. So the emulated version of the Android device does not have a Bluetooth device, which is not surprising. That's pretty difficult to emulate. Even if you can emulate a Bluetooth adapter, what is it going to talk to?
There's no hardware.
Well,
I think you can set it so it recognizes a Bluetooth adapter there, but not much else than that.
okay.
It'd be cool if you used to sync your bit instead of having to do that emulator. You just did through.
But I won't be able to show it here because I actually ran this code at home on my actual mobile device, my phone, my Nexus 5, but I will not be able to show it here. But let's try it the other way. Okay, I'm going to close this and go back to the AVD manager and see if I can enable a Bluetooth device here. It has front camera, back camera, internal storage, SD, but it doesn't give me an option to enable Bluetooth, so I don't think that's really an option.
That's unfortunate. It seems like most laptops currently have Bluetooth built into the laptop. It would be nice if it has a way to
pass through the Bluetooth adapter? Yeah, that would be nice, but there's no option to do it.
Oh, Tag, you haven't got your drivers for Linux for your new phone?
No, it doesn't require any special driver.
No, for the ADT or wait.
ADB.
ADB, yeah.
I think it connects, just fine. It will be able to do it.
I know last time you tried to do it with your older phone, and
Right. That's because it's a Samsung. I'm not kidding. Samsung has has special requirements. It needs special drivers to be installed, but the Nexus 5 just connects, just fine. I didn't have to install anything.
Because it's a Google phone.
Hmm?
Because it's a
it's
Google
on my
phone.
Google.
Well, it's a Google phone, but I think it has to do with the vendor ID is already recognized, and they know what to do with it. The vendor ID and the device ID.
Well, the device ID itself is specified inside of the driver that ADB recognizes.
Right.
Yeah. I've actually like taken apart the driver that Google
Oh,
and recompiled
okay.
it for Windows, so I
I
can
see.
use my own devices. That's how I know.
Yeah, yeah. Then it makes perfect sense that because ADB is a Google product, and then the Nexus phone is also a Google product, so it makes perfect sense that ADB already has a range already accepting.
It's really funny. It's not even like a driver per se. It just tells ADB that, hey, we recognize this device and it's an Android device, so you can use it. When you redo the driver, you just have to add the hardware IDs for whatever like say your phone doesn't have a driver available for ADB. You just add the hardware IDs for the device and give the device a name, and then it just and ADB's like, oh, this is an Android device. That's the extent of the driver.
Yep, it's a filter basically.
Yeah, it's a filter.
It's more of a filter than anything else.
I thought it was really funny because I thought it was going to be very involved, and I had to do it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start the virtual machine anyway, because I just want to kind of show you guys again what Toast does. Okay, because it's really handy. I found it to be really quite a handy way to display messages that doesn't need to stay on screen forever.
Yeah, quick on-screen debugging.
Yep. It's a replacement of printf. All right, let's close this guy and then run this again. I mean, obviously, I cannot really get past it at this point, just because the emulated device has no Bluetooth adapter. But it's a handy way. I mean, you click a button, you trigger an operation, and you can display something on screen. Pretty easy, quick way to provide some feedback of what happened. So, are there any questions at this point? I mean, I can't really show you the code to make the actual connection. I mean, I can show you the code, but I cannot show you how it runs because this device does not have a Bluetooth device. Does anyone know any really quick and easy way so that I can screencast from my actual mobile device onto any screen, any application? I know there has to be a way. I just need to find out how to do it.
Screencast from Google phone.
It would be nice if Eclipse, includes a tool like that. So when it uses ADB to connect to a phone, to an actual mobile device, it will be able to bring the screen on the mobile device, onto the screen of the application itself. I guess other than the classroom setting, it's not going to be a very useful feature because most people can just put the device next to the development desktop computer and be able to see it. But
Yes, but most people don't want to just keep going to the screen to look for changes.
Yeah, that's true.
You need to get a camera
I do have a camera. I can bring it next time.
and then just set your phone up next to the computer.
There has to be a more elegant solution. There has to be one.
There's a few.
A few?
Yeah.
Now, how do they talk? I mean, do they talk through networking or do they talk through USB?
Actually, it doesn't. You just download the app and stream it. You trying to screencast or stream?
I can do either one.
Well, there's a few. There's actually one in the Play Store called Screen Stream.
Okay.
And then I'll see if I can find Screencast.
Okay. Well, that's okay, because I can still kind of move on and talk about this. Okay, so right now, I have just, shown the Toast to say that, okay, there's a Bluetooth adapter available, so it's time to make sure it is actually enabled, right? So at this point, there's no need to delay anything. I can just say, if BT adapter dot is enabled. Okay. In fact, I'll just check for the negation. If it is not enabled, why is it complaining?
What's the difference between a char sequence and a string?
A char sequence is it is expecting a char sequence here. It does not expect a string here. I tried to give it a string and it wouldn't work.
Is it strings terminated char sequence is not?
Is that what it is?
I'm thinking.
So a char sequence is length delimited?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just set instead of just looking for a null at the end.
Okay. All right. So if it is not enabled, then I'm going to go through the intent thing that we were just talking about earlier. In other words, I will go ahead and basically write this code here. Enable intent. I can just copy and paste it. For the most part, not entirely, because certain things are not defined in my particular application yet. So, let's go ahead and copy that to here. That's ultimate plagiarization. Okay, so what this is going to complain about? Oh, that's not the code. That's not the right. I cannot even find the right code to plagiarize. So. Okay, there we go. Enable. Okay, there we go. This is the stuff. Okay, so here we have the plagiarized code, and I have to make some changes to it. So instead of using this, I have my own BT adapter variable. Intent is easy. It just needs to import it.
You just doubling what you just did?
Nope.
Look at the first first if and the second if.
Oh, the enable one?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't change the logic. It's
I
just
know.
ugly code. Is it enabled? Is it enabled?
I don't trust your first your first evaluation.
Is it enabled? If so, is it enabled? Yep. It's using the tab character. There we go. All right. Okay. The only part it's complaining about is request enable BT is not defined. So what I can do now is I can be lazy and just say, go ahead and create this constant. So what happens is at the beginning of the class, it now has a constant defined for that particular name. Okay, it can be 0, can be 10,000, can be 261. It doesn't matter as long as I keep using that constant consistently. Okay. Yep.
So it is. I thought the request enabled was the framework translating that to another piece.
Nope. There are two pieces. Okay, there are two pieces. They have about the same name, but they are not exactly the same. This one is called Bluetooth adapter dot action request enable, which translates into a string.
Yeah.
The other one is just an integer. This one is used internal to my application, so that when I get a response back, when I get a result back, I know this is the result of which request. So it's an internal identifier of, okay, this is the result of that thing that you requested earlier. The other one, this one here, is the actual, you can see the string definition.
Yeah.
This is what needs to be specified in order for the Android operating system to understand what I really want to do. So that's why there are two separate things. One is for the Android system itself. This one is for the Android system itself, and then the other one is just for my own application internal use.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the constant value assigned 0? Is that 0?
Say again.
Request enable BT
Yeah,
constant.
0 is fine. It just needs to be an integer.
No, I thought it says it cannot be 0 in the documentation for it.
Oh, okay. So the request code cannot be 0.
Yeah, I think so. Hold on. I read as
Request code, if greater than or equal to 0, this code will be returned on activity result. So 0 is fine.
Oh, 0
It just
is
has
fine.
to be non-negative. Or at least that's what the documentation is saying. Yep.
Unless Eclipse is wrong.
All right. Okay. So now we still have one missing piece, because what this call will do on line 38 is simply to ask the operating system, hey, Android operating system, I need somebody to help me with this. I need to enable the Bluetooth adapter. And then it returns right away. It returns as soon as the message is sent, and not when the end user makes a choice. So now I need to override another method to handle what happens when the result comes back. So I have to do another override here, and this is going to be another protected method, and I'm just looking it up and find out. On activity result is explained here. It's protected void, and this is the just copy and paste here. There we go. All right. So I'm overriding on activity result, and the first thing I need to do is to take a look at the result request code, not the result, but the request code. So I'm going to say if request code is request underscore enable DT, then I will do the following. In other words, I'm filtering, and saying, okay, I'm only processing the result code from a previous request using this as a request ID. Okay. Once I know that I'm processing the result of a request with this request ID, then I can check the result code against the other constants. In other words, I can check this one against result OK and also result cancel. So let's go back to here. Result OK. So if that is the case, I'm going to do one thing. If it is something else, if result code is result canceled.
Is that how OK is spelled?
I think it's just okay.
Yeah, it's just OK.
Instead of spelled
Just
out.
OK? Okay. And then cancel as
Okay.
1L. There we go. So now I can display, I can use the toast method and display another message here. But I can't really, there's no way to test this code, with a simulator, with an emulator. But when you run this code on an actual phone, you can now attach, additional toast methods. So when it comes back, you can say, okay, it's already enabled, or no, the user does not want to enable it. Okay. So are there any questions about how to link the start activity for result call, which is really just sending a message to the Android operating system and say, I need help, somebody need to do this, as opposed to the on activity result method, which is a callback. When it is done, then the Android operating system will pass the requesting application a message and say, you know what, that earlier request that you placed earlier, we got a result back now. Do something with it. And this method on activity result is how you specify what to do with the returned result. Now you can do nothing. I mean, it's perfectly okay to leave this, completely empty. But in this case, if you want to know, what actually happened, then this is how you process the result of that operation. So, are there any questions up to this point? So after close to more than an hour of discussion, now we have finally turned on the Bluetooth adapter. We haven't even talked about how to look up, the paired devices and stuff like that. Yep, go ahead.
So in the initialized Bluetooth, after it started the activity for result, it immediately returns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll exit out this piece of code. And I'm trying to understand what code is going to be executed. It's just going to be do you mind scrolling down the screen?
Mm-hmm. No problem. You talking about this code here?
Yeah, after it initialized.
Then it's
Bluetooth
nothing to do.
adapter.
This is an on click, which means it is only here to handle a click on that button.
Okay.
And as soon as this is done, your application is being quote unquote stuck in the UI thread again. It's waiting for the next message in the message queue.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not touching anything on the screen,
Okay.
it doesn't do a single thing.
Okay.
Now, if it does trigger the settings screen to pop up to ask the user, do you want to turn on the Bluetooth device? And the user answers one way or another,
Right.
that will come back as a message. And that's why the on activity result callback is going to get triggered.
Okay. Okay.
So everything that we have talked about so far is still happening within the UI thread.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, question?
Oh, I misspoke earlier. char sequence is an interface and string is a class of
That
char
implements.
sequence.
Okay, so it implements char sequence. Okay, but I still cannot specify double quoted strings inside the call. It doesn't work that way. I tested it already. I was trying to kind of shortcut it, and nope, would not work. All right, so we have just turned on the device, and let's check the web page and see how far we have gone so far. We are, I would say, about a little less than a quarter done.
Good time.
Well, but I think it's really kind of interesting because what we have talked about so far is not applicable, or some of it is not only applicable to Bluetooth, but anytime you want to request, and I say, okay, this is not something that I know how to do, I'm just going to specify the intent of getting this done, and then let the Android operating system to decide who can actually get it done. And then when it's done, you can ask it to come back with a result code and say, let me know when it's done, and it can come back with the code. So that's really kind of useful because you can pop up the Maps application, you can pop up a browser application and whatnot. You can just tell the Android operating system and say, I need to go to a URL. Here's the URL I need to get to. All right. Okay, so we are now proceeding to this part, finding devices, because now we have found the adapter, the Bluetooth adapter, and we can turn it on. Using the Bluetooth adapter, you can find remote Bluetooth devices either through device discovery, which means it's actually going to scan around and say, okay, who is actually around me, or by querying the list of paired bonded devices, which does not involve scanning. It's really just looking at the database and say, okay, of all the devices that you have connected already, let's check out the paired devices. Device discovery is a scanning procedure, and this is the one that requires the Bluetooth_admin permission, whereas just scanning through the paired devices does not. Scanning procedure that searches the local area for Bluetooth-enabled devices and then requesting some information about each one. So the information that comes back would include the MAC address, which is unique to each device, what kind of device it is, and I think there's one more thing that it returns, the class. It's actually specified down here. If a device is discoverable, it will respond to the discovery request by sharing some information such as the device name, class, and its unique MAC address. The MAC address is what you need to use to make the actual connection. Using this information, this device performing discovery can then choose to initiate a connection to the discovered device. Now this sentence is actually quite important. The device being discovered, which is the remote device, can then choose to initiate a connection to the discovered device. Okay, so that means if your phone is scanning around, then your phone can then try to initiate a connection to whatever it's discovering. Yep.
What if someone has a spoofed MAC address? Will it just finally connect to that device?
What if someone has a spoofed MAC address?
Yes, from a Bluetooth device, of the device that it's intending to connect to.
Then it would not be able to distinguish between the actual and the spoofed one. Yep, there's not a whole lot of security because you can spoof a MAC address really easily. So if you right, but with a Bluetooth device too, you can do about the same thing. You can basically fake a MAC address, assuming the device itself allows you to do it. Okay, some devices may be locked down and they don't let you do it, but you can probably find flexible devices that allows you to change the MAC address to whatever you want. But as far as the scanning device is concerned, there's no way to tell between the real McCoy and the fake device. Okay, because a MAC address is just a MAC address. It's 6 bytes. That's all it is. So if you really want to ensure some kind of security between the device, the main device, and also the thing that you're connecting to, You cannot rely on just the MAC address to say that yes, that's the top secret machine thing that I'm connecting to. After the connection, you need a second level of authentication process to make sure that that really is the device that you want to connect to. Are there any questions about that part? Okay, do not trust the MAC address. Okay, it is not necessarily the most reliable way to establish authentication. It's a first step. Okay, it's a first step. But once you have the MAC address, you need to have a secondary way to authenticate. Once a connection is made with a remote device for the first time, a pairing request is automatically presented to the user. So this one does not require you to do a single thing. Okay, it will just basically pop up a dialog box to say, okay, what is the pin of this particular device, and so on. When a device is paired, the basic information about the device, such as the device name, class, and MAC address, is saved and can be read using the Bluetooth API. And this is the part that does not require the admin right. Okay, so just specifying that your application requires Bluetooth permission is okay once it is paired. The pairing itself, on the other hand, does require the admin permission. Using the known MAC address for the remote device, for a remote device, a connection can be initiated within any time without performing discovery any further. So that is the one that requires the admin permission. Remember, there is a difference between being paired and being connected. We kind of talked about it earlier today. To be paired means they are aware of each other's existence and have a shared linked key. And then the other one, to have a connection, to be connected means the devices currently have shared a RF-COM, a radio frequency communication channel, and are able to transmit data with each other. Okay, so the two states are different. Okay, but in order to be connected, they have to be paired first. But to be paired does not imply they are connected. The following sections describe how to find devices that have been paired or discover how new devices using device discovery. Okay, so this is probably what I'll go over today because it's really quite thick. Okay, this stuff is a little bit thick, so we'll kind of go through this part only. Before performing device discovery, it is worth querying the set of paired devices to see if the desired device is already known. To do so, call this particular method. And it is a method of a Bluetooth adapter, so you can see it is just a method of a Bluetooth adapter object. This will return a set of Bluetooth devices being presented. Okay, so the question now is, what exactly is that syntax? It makes use of the class set, but it also makes use of the class Bluetooth device. So what exactly is it? What is the name of a construct like this in Java? Or in C++. Some of you may have seen it already if you're taking cisp363.
It looks like a template.
It is a template class, yes. So set is a template class, but when you have a template class, you have to say it is a set of what? It can be a set of integers, it can be a set of strings, it can be a set of whatever, right? So in this case, it is a set of Bluetooth devices. Okay. Now, fortunately, Java actually has features to make use of sets pretty easily. So when you have a set of Bluetooth devices, to go through the entire set and look at each item in the set is pretty easy. You can use a for loop here. This kind of for loop is kind of like for each in other languages. It's called a for each, through a list. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are there other set template types like beside Bluetooth device? Are there others?
You can make a set out of anything. You can make a set out of integers. You can make a set out of
okay, so that's just a template inside of Android. Is it template class?
I think the set template class is Java itself.
Okay.
And then Bluetooth device is Android specific.
Okay.
So if you look up the
that's what I was curious about. Are there other things besides like not integers, but like other device types like the Wi-Fi or whatever?
There is one requirement to be the class inside the angle brackets because you have to be able to check for duplicates.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because the definition, the difference between a set of something as opposed to a list of something is in a list you can have the same element or the same value repeating itself. So you can have a list of 1, 3, 5, and then 1 again. Okay, that's perfectly okay as a list. But when you have a set, the ordering does not matter. But you cannot have duplicate items. So you can have 1, 3, and 5, 3, 5, 1, and 3, 1, 5. They're all considered the same set because the sequence does not matter. But you cannot have duplicate values in a set. So that's why I think Bluetooth devices actually has a way to basically identify itself, and it has to match how a set template class checks for duplicates.
So we'll just automatically reject duplicates, or we'll throw in a type of
It rejects. So when you try to add an item already in a set, it would just say, okay, it's already here, there's nothing to do. And it doesn't hurt to kind of look it up. I just really want to look it up to be 100% sure. So we'll say, look at the set template class. Generic types, how to create a Java. Okay, I guess in Java it's called generic types, but it's basically the same thing as a template class in C++. Type parameters. Doesn't say anything about set. Oh, okay, that's not the name of the template class.
It is set Bluetooth device as part of the Bluetooth adapter object in Android. So Android.Bluetooth.Bluetooth adapter is part of that class.
Right, but but a set class is actually I think it's set interface. A set is a collection that cannot contain duplicate elements.
Yeah, set is part of Java, but the Bluetooth
Right.
adapter part is actually part of Android.
Yeah, but how does it know there's no duplicate?
It just said a set is a data structure that does not allow duplicate elements. That's the Android documentation.
So that usually means the equal operator is defined. That's how we can check for duplicates.
That actual set is looking like the way that it's saying it's used in the API is that it calls get bonded devices, and so it looks for only paired devices. So you use that when you're looking for paired devices. I would assume. If you look up Bluetooth adapter in the Android documentation, that's what it says.
Okay.
That's really cool.
Yep. Well, but the really cool part is you can go through all the items inside a set using a construct like this. This type of loop is not present in C++. You basically say for, and then inside parentheses, you define the object itself, and then you put a colon, and then you specify the set on the other side. So what this does is it will go through every item in the set, and for each item it will perform the line of code that says m array adapter add blah 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 blah. So in this case, it's a pretty easy way to do it. I mean, you don't have to set up your own loop to do it.
So it assigns the devices to an array?
It basically maps the devices in the set to an array of strings to be displayed as a list box in Android. It's all done with a simple loop like that.
That's pretty cool.
It is handy. It's a very handy language feature. In C++, if you use the template class called set, you have to go through a lot more trouble to go through all the items. You have to set up the iterators and all kinds of stuff. But in Java, the language itself has support to make it easy, which is great. How many people have taken or is currently taking CISP 400, Object-Oriented Programming, or 401, the Java class? Have they started to talk about iterators?
Currently,
Oh, you have taken it before?
Yes.
So do they talk about the iterators and template class like set?
I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay.
They do talk about some iterators.
Okay.
Not set though.
Okay. Yeah, a set is really useful. A map is also useful. A set is something you can have a set of objects, but a map maps a key to a value. So it's kind of like an extension of a set because you cannot have duplicate keys either in that case. It's kind of like a hash. Sorry?
Oh, a lot less overhead using a set compared to an array.
Yes, because every time you add something to a set, it has to check for duplicates. Which also means in C++, the equal operator has to be defined for the class inside the angle brackets because that's how it checks for duplicates. Yep.
Okay. I found the information. It's called the set interface or set interface.
Okay, in Java.
Yeah, and it gives all the information there.
Okay, I think you may be looking at the same page that I'm looking at.
You are.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah, what I'm curious about is how does it check for duplicates? The class that is inside the angle brackets, what does it have to supply in order for duplicates to be checked?
Probably just the paired devices themselves, like whatever their string is, I would assume. Because that kind of makes sense to me, because bonding, like when you pair different Bluetooth devices, like I used to use my phone to transfer files to my computers and stuff. It wouldn't, if you say for some reason that for some reason you got a different device but it was named the same, you couldn't always add it to that because it wouldn't let you. It would say, oh, there's already a device named that in here, we can't use it. So.
Okay. Well, we don't have to really know about the actual mechanism. I was just a little bit curious about how set is actually implemented in Java.
You don't need to know, but it's nice.
No, yeah, exactly. We don't need to know. Yep. Okay, so that's how you can look up a pair. You can make a list you can make a list of paired devices, and inside you can also have the device get address returns the MAC address. So this string includes both the name and also the MAC address of each device, and then you can use a list box to select which one you want to connect to. With the remaining time, I just want to kind of talk about sockets in general, because that's what we need to know later on to to have an actual connection. Okay, so we have two devices. Okay, the question is how do you have these two devices to connect to each other? That's the question. Okay. If you think about networking, because I think Bluetooth borrowed, a few concepts from networking in general. How do you make a connection to a server? In other words, let's look at the browser. Okay, how do I make a connection to let's say the power server and display the home page of the power server?
There is a socket that is open on the power server that redirects traffic to its IP address to that particular, like from a browser. Because browser use 80 or 8080.
Okay. Well, from the perspective of this computer, I can enter the IP address of the power server. Okay, that's the address. Okay, that is how I identify the machine that I'm trying to connect to. Now, unlike a network connection, which allows you to specify the port number, without specifying the port number, it is usually just port 80 for unencrypted HTTP traffic. But you can always specify a port number to be sure. Okay, 80 for HTTP, and then 443 for HTTPS. Okay. In the case of Bluetooth, there's no port number. There's just the MAC address. So if you want to make a connection to a particular Bluetooth device, you basically say, okay, I want to make a connection to MAC address blah 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 blah, and that's how you make that connection. All right. Now there are two names now, okay? Because a connection doesn't make sense, to on the same device. You can do it, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the Bluetooth, setting. So you have Bluetooth device A, and then you have, let's say, Bluetooth device B. Let's just say that A is your mobile device. This is your phone, and and then device B is my Fitbit tracker. Okay, so the one that is requesting the connection is called the client. Okay, so in this case, if my phone is requesting a connection, so this is a request to connect. This makes a client in this relationship, and then it makes B the server in this particular configuration. Now, Bluetooth is really interesting because you can reverse the roles. Okay, easily you can reverse the roles, and then you can say, okay, I want to make this the server, and then have my Fitbit tracker to become the client. So I would just be, waiting here on my phone. My phone would just be waiting and say, okay, I'm ready to accept connections from the Fitbit, tracker. And whenever the Fitbit, tracker says, okay, I have just filled up the internal buffer with all the activities and whatnot, I need to find the phone to upload, all the data. Then you can say, okay, phone, where are you? Using the MAC address to identify the phone. And then once my phone responds to it, then it can make the connection. Okay, so here's the interesting part. The server, the server socket applies only on the server side. So on the server side, which is B here, it has what we call a server socket. Now, a server socket is different from a regular socket in some interesting ways. Okay. A server socket is identified by the MAC address. So we'll just go ahead and link this one to, okay, this is identified by its MAC address, which is supposed to be unique to each device. Okay, but since it can be spoofed, you cannot trust it 100%. Okay, so when the client, which is the device A here, tries to make a connection, it will basically say, I need to connect to a device with a particular MAC address. And then what the Android operating system would do is to go through its list of paired devices and say, okay, do I have a paired device with this MAC address? Yes, I do. Okay, so that means that I don't have to ask for any further authentication. And then what it would do is it would broadcast using the Bluetooth radio frequency component. It would just broadcast and say, okay, are you around here? Okay, the device with a MAC address of blah, 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 are you around here? And then on the other side, on device B, it will receive the request to connect, it will receive a request to say, somebody wants to connect to this MAC address. The requesting machine has its own MAC address, and the request to connect would also include the MAC address of the requesting device. So the other device, the server device, would look at the request to connect and say, is this someone that I know? Yes, it is. So now the connection can be made. Now when the connection is made, then two sockets are created as a result. One socket, not a server socket, is created on this side, on the server side. Another socket is created on the client side. So these two are regular sockets. They are not server sockets. This is a server socket. On the server side, it has to perform a call called accept. Okay, so on the server side, B blah 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 has to do what we call an accept call. The accept call, or as a method, is a blocking call. In other words, when device B calls accept, accept is not going to return right away. It will only return when it is accepting a request to connect. Are we doing okay so far with that concept? Now when accept comes back and say, okay, we are accepting a connection, the return value of accept is a regular socket. And then on the other side, the request to connect call will also return with an actual socket. Now that you have one socket on device A and one socket on device B, these two sockets can then provide you with input stream and output stream. The output stream of A becomes the input stream of B. The output stream of B becomes the input stream of A. And then at that point, once the connection is established, you have two-way communication using two separate streams. Whatever you transmit from A will go to B, and then whatever transmits from B, it will go back to A. Are there any questions about the general concept of sockets? And this is not even specific to Bluetooth. It also applies to networking. Except in the case of networking, you identify the other side not by the MAC address, but by its IP address and the port number. But other than that, it's basically the same concept. Well, here's another question. What if there's another machine C over here? While A and B are connected, C says, I want in too. What's going to happen?
Creates a new ID.
It depends on whether B allows it. Okay? B actually has an option. A server socket is really just an ID. It's just a flagpole saying that I'm here. So that means, while A and B are connected, C can basically see, oh, I want to make a connection to this MAC address too. So C can now send a request to connect to the same server socket identified by the MAC address. And as long as B is also running accept at that point, then B can choose to say, it's okay, not a problem. I'm going to create another socket here and accept this connection or accept this request to connect. Then C, once the connection is accepted, then B and C will also have their own bidirectional communication channel. So at this point, B has it still has one server socket, which is really just a flagpole saying I'm here. But it has two individual sockets, one for communicating to device A and the other one to communicate with device C. This is a multi-point communication. It is supported by Bluetooth as a standard. Are there any questions about this picture? Because it is not what most people think of Bluetooth, because most people think of Bluetooth as a point-to-point device, but it really can be a multi-point or multi-connect type of configuration. Okay, yep, go ahead.
This is a multi-point connection. It's different from multicast, right?
It's not the same as multicast, because multicast means, if someone sends something, everybody can get it at the same time. This one is basically just saying that, I can have a separate connection to A and a different connection to C in this case. But A cannot see the traffic going to C by default, and C cannot see the traffic going to A by default. Now, if B is the one that is saying, okay, whatever A sends to me, I'll broadcast to everybody, that's up to the application to decide. But it is a useful concept because this allows you to have multiple clients connecting to the same server. And what type of Bluetooth device do you think might be practical and useful for this type of a configuration?
Audio streaming or something like that.
Audio streaming can be useful. Then you can have multiple Bluetooth devices connecting to the same Bluetooth speaker. And in that case, B is the speaker, and it has to basically do a mixer application to mix the input stream from both A and C in this case. Yep.
What if C stops responding? What happens to the socket on B?
Okay. So if C is, if let's say you just power down C without closing down the socket, because there is a proper way to close down a socket. So when the socket is closed down properly, B will know about it. If you just turn off the power on C, at some point the Bluetooth adapter itself will notice that the connection to C is lost, and that will trigger the Android operating system to indicate this socket is no longer valid. It will cause exceptions, basically. When you try to read from a stream corresponding to a socket that it does not exist anymore, it will just raise an exception. So you have a choice to catch that exception and process it, or just let the application die, out of the exception.
But in this case, B is your Fitbit.
Yep. Well, in this case, B is my Fitbit, right? But the Fitbit only allows point-to-point connection, so you can only have one device connecting to it. But Bluetooth does allow multi-point connection. It is actually documented in this document here. Let me just kind of scroll back here. it's described right here, enabling point-to-point and multi-point wireless features. There is a particular use of this type of connection. When you want to share a internet connection through 4G, through your phone, you can share the connection through Wi-Fi, but you can also share the connection through Bluetooth. So this allows multiple devices to go through one single device to connect to the network, the 4G network. Bluetooth is slower. It's definitely a lot slower, but it does allow another way of sharing internet connections. Are there any questions about this part? In fact, what I want to do now is to see if it is by default already enabled in Android to allow internet, it's called tethering, using Bluetooth.
Yes, but it depends on your carrier if they allow you to tether.
They cannot tell whether you're tethering.
Well, some
User ID.
some carriers restrict tethering to their own application, and they check authentication against your account whether you're allowed to tether or not.
I see.
Well, his phone's rooted, so.
Yep, mine is rooted
Yep.
using Cyanogen mod. Yep, so I can set up the portable Wi-Fi hotspot, and also Bluetooth, and also USB tethering. So all of those are possible. So I'm going to enable Bluetooth tethering just so that see if you guys can see it. But I have to I have to reconfigure my Bluetooth so that you can discover me to begin with. Just hold on 1 second. Go to Bluetooth, change my setting. Okay, I should be visible to you guys now. I have 5 minutes. I set the timer to 5 minutes. And my phone is just
707.
Nexus 5. Sorry?
Okay. No, that's
Yeah, my phone is called Nexus 5, and you should be able to see it.
No devices found.
On Bluetooth?
I see Mac.
Yeah.
Ammonium Linux 0, is that?
Say again?
What's your MAC address?
My MAC address? Let me see.
Well, it
D7.
says being ammonium Linux 0.
I
You see
see
mine.
Mac-8NM-32.
Okay, let's see. Where do I find my
889.
Bluetooth MAC address?
Now I see DA89.
That's me.
Okay, I just turned on visible to all nearby
Nexus
Bluetooth
5.
devices. Nexus 5. Oh, okay, I can see SGHT889.
There you are.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, allow the pairing. But I want to see if I can pair with multiple devices. Okay, there's a Pandemonium Linux 0.
Me.
Okay, allow. Okay, so you're now, both of these devices are now paired to me. Can you go through me to go to the internet? Can you check?
Let me shut off the Wi-Fi.
Because that's one application of a multi-point connection, is to allow multiple devices to go to one single device and use this, as the gateway to go outside.
Yeah, mine requires a passkey.
Okay, pair.
Does Bluetooth have enough throughput? Does Bluetooth have enough throughput to be able to handle, a fast connection?
No, Bluetooth is really slow. The bandwidth is really slow. The nice thing about Bluetooth compared to Wi-Fi is low power. Yeah. So because it's slower, and also the range is about, well, no, it's not about the same. Bluetooth is shorter also.
I think there may be some special setup I'd have to do for that.
Yeah, you might have to do something special, but I think the other Android phones are already set up to share through Bluetooth.
I'm tracking my phone.
You can install Android on a desktop.
There you go.
No, I'm not kidding. That's actually where Android is heading, because they already have 1080p Android devices. So when you're talking about 1080p, you're talking about this kind of resolution already.
Never mind. There's nothing special. I have to do.
Yep.
Yep.
Profile web page.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Cool.
in Linux, all you have to do is in the network manager, just select it as the network device.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause you can set it
Nice.
to use it as a PAP/.
So the stack is already set up basically.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice.
All
I
right.
turn it off or use all your data.
All right.
Yeah,
guys.
I'm gonna turn it off. But it does work.
I was all
Watch your own videos.
No, cyanogen mod update. 500 megabytes right there.
You have a data cap?
Hmm?
You have a data cap?
Not exactly.
Per se.
Yeah, with
It's 67 degrees outside.
Who did you say your carrier was?
T-Mobile.
It's got
T-Mobile
one thing
has
that-
basically unlimited. Okay, there are several plans. One plan is called unlimited, which is really unlimited. You can basically get full bandwidth, full available full available bandwidth, unlimited amount. With the one that I'm getting, because I'm cheap, so I go for the default one. It gives me 500 megabytes of full speed bandwidth, and then after that they drop it down to, according to T-Mobile, it's sub 2G speed.
Edge network?
Huh?
Edge network?
Hmm?
Edge.
Edge,
Yes, 2G.
I guess. Yeah, but it's gonna be really slow. It's all done by it's just artificially clocking
Yeah,
it down.
watch web page load.
Yeah.
Text block. Text block.
Yep.
Text block.
And then you configure your browser not to load the bitmaps.
Where did you set the time limit for Bluetooth?
I turned it off already.
I know, but where did you set the time?
Where do you set the timer?
You said you changed it to 5 minutes.
Well, it depends on your.
It kind of depends on it, but on mine, this is how I do it. Exactly. So when you go to Bluetooth, you click on your home device here, then you can set your
Honestly, you should save the output.
No, mine
We're
doesn't.
gonna use the Bluetooth, I think.
Okay, here.
I'm probably gonna upgrade
Here
to
first. Set up like setting.
Well, I know a couple years, yeah.
Okay, and then you can
Have fun debugging problems in beta operating
Since
system.
it only has 4
Working for us,
voices.
Yeah.
It's going to be the next long-term
Say
system.
never time out.
Still bugging.
And watch static, right?
1404. I mean,
It's technically still testing right
And watch your bandwidth go
Oh.
away, you also enable.
maybe I should wait till 1404.
So what did that say?
That one.
Did they actually release? Did they actually put it out as LTS?
Yeah.
Because it just came out of testing. It was the beta.
All right. Well, I'm gonna conclude today's lecture at this point. But I think it's a pretty useful lecture already up to this point. And then on next Monday, we'll actually go ahead and
Well, what's wrong?
write the code to make connections. And from here to Monday, what I'll do is I'm gonna go home and see if I can use my Bluetooth dongle in Linux so that I can have one acting as a client and then have my phone to act as a server, or the other way around. So this way I can at least make a dumb terminal application. I can type something on one side and make it appear on the other side.
That'd be cool.
Yep. But I have to find time to do it because on Sunday I have a particular event to go to.